Everyone. This is the Committee on Rules and Ordinances, and we are here tonight for a continuation of our discussion regarding short-term rentals. So we were here back on September 20th, and at that time, Gideon was kind enough to prepare, for the record, I'm sorry, I'm Anthony Donato. I am the committee chair. To my left is Lisa Feltner, who is the committee secretary, and to my right is Kenny Woodland, who is the vice chair. So we were here on September 23rd. At that point, Gideon had provided us with a memorandum that had, some discussion and some options for short-term rentals. I think if I could hopefully briefly summarize, Councilor Woodland is in favor of changing zoning to allow short-term rentals, but other than that, he's not really in favor of regulating short-term rentals. Is that a fair?
It's a very fair and concise summary of my position.
Okay. And then Councilor Feltner and I also are in favor of amending the zoning ordinance to allow short-term rentals, but we see some merit in regulating short-term rentals.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. So, to be quite honest, I left the last meeting and I was very confused. I think, in theory, this is a relatively simple topic, but I think in practice, some of the verbiage can be really confusing. So I had a conversation with Gideon the other day in which we talked about the fact that I had been thoroughly confused at the end of last meeting, and that I thought it made sense to go back to the memo to make sure that everybody's on the same page as to what it said, what it actually meant, and whether or not this committee is on board moving forward with those recommendations to the full council. Now, the calendar's working against us a little bit because obviously it's the end of November and the current term expires at the end of December. So although I would love to get this sorted out before the end of the year, because we don't know the composition of this committee very well could change in January, I also don't want to rush it. So I think that's a good bit of background. And I think the confusion for me, at least, was it seemed to be everybody was on board that the actual changes to the zoning tables, that all of that made sense, because that then allows the use of short-term rentals to proceed. But then when we got into some of the definitions and subsequent regulations, I think that was where some of the confusion came to be. So, I don't know, Gideon, do you want to?
I can talk about the two areas that I think the first hanging point, which we spent a lot of time on at the last meeting, and then and with the help of you reminding me prior to this meeting what those hanging points were, and then also some of the language that I looked to Boston as well, since that was referenced by you and also by the committee during the last meeting to speak to that for that first section. And then there's another section where it just throws out a few different things that came up in the meeting. So I'd be happy to, so the first piece is the concept of the quote-unquote operator occupied versus the owner adjacent. And I discussed this with some staff to try to brainstorm ways to make this more straightforward. And on page 3, at the bottom of the page, there's an A and a B. And subpart A, 1A, talked about operator occupied, and part B talked about owner adjacent. And part A basically was too many points in one point, which was, the operator occupied. So in effect, and this is what Austin did, and I certainly think it makes more sense. In fact, there's 3 types of short-term rentals. There's the operator/owner occupied, which is a room share. So they're sharing a room in their unit. So they're saying, here's a bedroom, here's 2 bedrooms, here's 3 bedrooms, and there's a limitation on how many people might be able to come into that unit and use it, but it's just a room and you're living there and you're there while they're there. So that's one. And then 2 is the operator / owner occupied whole unit. And in that scenario, you're not there because you're on a trip or you're on vacation or you're gone. In Boston, that is, they do limit everything to owner occupied only. In Cambridge, they have defined it as operator occupied. So in this scenario, it is your entire single family. And because we also will be talking about 2 families later, that one is, a whole unit is really a house scenario. And we're not going to call it that though, we're going to call it a unit, it's a whole unit. So you're the operator or the owner, and you occupy it, and you're not there, and it gets rented out while you're not there to someone who comes and stays for a week, or stays for a couple days, or even longer. And then the third option was the owner adjacent concept, which would not apply to a single family ever, because single families only have a single unit. And so in that case, it's a owner, and they have an adjacent unit. And the way that our language read, it was a single unit that they could turn into a short-term rental. So if you had, and our original language was, it didn't matter how many units there were in a building, you could, as an owner adjacent, you could rent out 1 unit outside of yours, which is within a building. So those were the 3 categories. We had it in 2 categories before, so we were talking about the operator occupied, and then 2 caveats, and then this owner adjacent. And it started to get, it got confusing. We were playing off in one instance, and there was limitations, which I think we would put a star under and say, and make that determination. And so if we talked about these operator and or, depending on what choice you guys want to make, option for the room share, that would be any time. It's basically limited by the number of bedrooms and or the number of people. So on the same page, I copied and pasted a summary of what Boston has. Their actual ordinance is down and not available online, ironically, right this moment. They have a dead link. So I asked them for it, but it's really tonight. So number 6, 7, and 8 are actually not suggested as an additional 6, 7, and 8 above on that same page. Those are just what Boston did for their limitations, which is, 1, they're limiting it to up to 3 family buildings only. And this is because you suggested we look at Boston as well. And they have the limited share, which is that the owner is present during the rental. The home share, that's what they call it, which is that the whole unit's available. And it's someone who's living there normally and they're not there, and it would be limited to 5 bedrooms or 10 guests is what they suggest. And then there's the owner adjacent, which is a single secondary unit for a short-term rental. So that's Boston's language. Our previous language had limited the, I'll just use Boston's language, limited share. We were limiting that to 3 bedrooms, but we did not have a limitation on the number of guests. And Boston suggests 3 guest bedrooms or 6 guests. Whichever, it doesn't say whichever the greatest.
I'm sorry, I'm lost.
I don't know if you want to talk about those 3 categories?
Yeah, so maybe let's start with the 3 categories. I think that makes, because I have a note here from our last meeting where I circled the 1A and B and said, I don't understand this.
And so I didn't put those 3 categories down there because it was also referenced up above. So we reference it in 2 places.
Sure.
One is a definition, which may not be as relevant, but, and so I didn't want to mess with that down below until we talked about it.
Sure.
But I wanted to have Boston's language right in front of your eyes so you could see the difference. And I also think that I was going to break it into those 3 categories for tonight because it dawned on you that it really is three categories that we're talking about, and we were trying to talk about the owner stuff all under one category, and it was like, well, there's this or that, and there's too many points in one section.
So I think it makes sense to break it into the three categories, because I think it's cleaner. So that's one aspect of this. Kenny, do you, Lisa?
So you're saying where 6, 7, and 8 here are, you'd move those and replace 1A, 1B?
Yeah, so, and I put a summary of it, so 6, 7, and 8 is also a comment section to the right, there's the summary of those three types, which is basically a room share, a whole unit share, and an adjacent unit share. Those are the three types that we were discussing at the last meeting. And so yes, 6, 7, and 8 are those three types. That's Boston's terminology. I don't know if we would want to use their terminology or use ours of operator, owner occupied room share, operator, owner occupied home unit, and owner adjacent home unit.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm not quite grasping the difference other than maybe specifically the space between room share. I mean, to me, that sounds like
I'm just
let's say I'm somebody that has roommates already. I'm not the owner of the property. Does this cover, I'm trying to understand that versus.
So, yeah, so I think that's another issue
But
that
that's
Gideon
yet
and
a
I,
different one.
yeah, so we'll get to that in a
Okay.
second. So I think,
So
I think I live in a single-family home.
Right,
The owner occupied is, I have a three-bedroom home.
Right.
I live in one bedroom, and I use the other two bedrooms for short-term rentals. The owner occupied is, I'm going out of town for 3 months, so I
Yeah.
rent out all three bedrooms.
you actually rent out the whole.
Right, the whole unit. And then the last is, I live in either a 2 or a 3-family. I live in one unit, and I use
yeah.
either of the other two as a short-term rental.
And the first scenario is the one that we had that had no issues and came to the board to try to come up with a way for her to continue to allow her house to have those rooms rented. She owns a house, it's a little larger, it's sitting there, those bedrooms aren't being used, and so she basically she was getting short-term roommates, but not long-term roommates, short-term, less than 28 or 30 days. That's the difference.
But-
They're not roommates because they're less than 28 days, so they're short-term.
So we're distinguishing between, is the only difference whether someone's there or not? I mean, I understand the whole unit, but practically speaking,
Well,
you're not
Whether or
going to
not the-
say you can't use the kitchen, right? I'm assuming
It's
that.
whether or not the owner of the home is present during the short-term rental.
You might regulate them differently, and that's why we're breaking them into these three categories. You may choose to not regulate them all, at all, then it doesn't matter.
Okay.
But right now we had proposed a limitation on up to only 3 bedrooms, so if you had a 6-bedroom house,
Yeah,
you can't rent out all 6 bedrooms. And then there was concerns about the number of people, and so I threw out a number that Boston is currently using, which is you can do up to 3 bedrooms or up to 6 people, no more than that, no matter how big or little your house is. There's a limitation on the maximum number.
right, but it's just,
So that's the-
practically speaking, other than the whole house, it says 5 bedrooms or 10 guests, but it's whether you're there or not, in practice, not,
Yeah, I didn't want to get into the.
Right.
So that's, I'm trying to separate that's the second one is whether you're there or not. If you're not there, our previous language from last meeting said, if you're not there for 7 days, then it triggers you shall only rent it as a single unit to one entity, rather than with the bedrooms, you could rent it to 3 separate Airbnb or short-term renters. So you could have three separate entities there at the same time, and you're there as well.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not, that's different from what we were talking about before.
It's not, that's why so the first option is.
Because you said we were, had the 7-day limit, now we're,
I summarized this.
Just trying to
I didn't make any
sorry.
proposed language, so you need to decide if 7 days, it's the same language as before. The point is, there's room share, which is someone is living in their house and they have some rooms. And so we didn't have any limitations on the length of stay or the number of days that you would share those rooms out. But we did limit that in the old language to no more than 3 individual bedrooms and no more than 3 short-term renters.
So I didn't ask Gideon to make any changes to the requirements section.
Okay.
I just asked, when we spoke the other day, I mentioned to him that I thought some of the language in Boston could help. So I think Gideon at the top inserted these things so we would have this information in front of us as to how Boston is dealing with it. He didn't make any changes down here because he didn't know how we were gonna receive this. So if we agree this makes sense moving forward, we're gonna have to change some of the language and
Well,
requirements.
because in other words, right, what I'm saying is before, we said not rented as separate bedrooms to separate parties. It's not just the 7 days.
Yeah, so that's the issue, is that before, there was 2 categories, but it was all merged into one long paragraph. So one option is, like I said, a room share, where you're living in your house and you're renting out rooms, and you can rent out up to 3 rooms.
I know, I'm sorry, can I finish my question, because I heard what you say, you're just gonna repeat the same thing. It sounds to me, and I might be wrong, that the difference, when you say separate parties, to me, that sounds like different reservations.
Yes.
Where in 1A, not rented as separate bedrooms to separate parties, if you're away 7 days or more.
Right, and so that's number 2.
So.
That would now be that would be operator, owner occupied.
The whole unit, and I actually think the 7 days is an impossible line, and I think that even though that's what Cambridge had, I actually think that it should be, if you're not there, you have to rent it out as a single unit. If it's, I mean, that's an easier, I mean,
Isn't that
that's up to you guys
isn't that
to
what
decide.
number 6 says?
Yeah, that's Boston's
Yeah.
model. So I think Boston's model is fairly straightforward for number 6, which is the room share.
I guess what I'm trying to get at is when you say the whole unit, I was assuming that's one party. But you're saying
Yes.
whether, you are saying versus separate parties if
Yeah.
it's a room
Yeah,
share?
so if they're gone,
I mean, it would
if
almost
they're
seem like it'd be
gone,
the
then
other
it
way
has to be-
around.
basically, if they're gone, it has to be a single unit. It's just a house that they rented out to one person.
So if, in
One party.
my initial
One
example,
reservation.
single family, I'm 3 bedrooms.
Yeah.
I'm in one of the bedrooms. I can have separate reservations for bedroom 2 and 3. In the second scenario, the operator owner, I'm gone.
You're
All
on-
3, on vacation.
Okay.
All 3 units can only be reserved by one party.
So you
This
can
is
have
the
more
other
people,
unit.
but one party.
Right.
Yeah, the whole house can be Airbnb as a single,
Yeah.
as a single reservation.
And if it's a 2-family, you can only rent out the second one
Which is
in the
exactly
full
the same
unit,
as-
yeah. Yeah, I don't mind if we change the language from E1A and B to incorporate 6, 7, and 8 as it's listed above. It's probably cleaner doing it that way.
And I just want to, if we're doing that, I just want to make sure that we're sure about, those are Boston's numbers, so I don't want us to
Yeah.
adopt.
Yeah.
Sure.
We'd have to take out the sentence about the fee, 'cause I have no idea what that's talking about.
Yeah.
And all of
Just
them.
have that in there for your
Yeah, yeah.
life.
What is, does the building code defines how many people can share a room? Or no?
There's 3 codes, and I can't tell you which one defines how many people would be allowed in the this space.
Okay.
Based on square footage, not only, but there are
thought there was-
implications based on, it's either building, public, the health, or the,
But isn't there, I thought there was a max for borders, there's a max for, in
All
our
right,
car-
I'm sorry
car
to interrupt.
code,
Before,
what you're saying,
before
yeah.
we get into bedrooms, people's
Okay.
fees, do we think it makes sense to move forward with the 3 different categories?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just not sure about which wording to choose. I mean, I,
I would strike out what we have today.
Exactly.
And if there's something in there,
strike out
time-wise,
below and
Yeah.
put in,
Yep. Because the problem is that we had a definition of above that said it.
yeah, okay.
That said operator occupied and owner adjacent. And then we also had what it could be. And down below it could be a very simple category like I have in the comment section if it's in the definition or vice versa.
So then, so we would be striking definitions 4 and 5 and replacing them with what is in the draft before us tonight, 6, 7, and 8. Okay. Tony, did you have a?
Yeah, just down below in the comment that Gideon made, I understand the first 2, I think. Then it said owner adjacent, whole units. What's the 2?
So we now, that's going to be another question, yeah.
That's another.
That will be another question that will, because in the way Cambridge does it, in the way that our regulations are currently set up, it's basically, there's no real limit on what type of building it's in. So that will be,
So the owner adjacent, though, is one of the 3 categories that you're going to agree to.
right,
Right, so, and the owner adjacent is, I'm in a 3-family house, right? And I own the house.
yes,
And I have a tenant on the first floor, and I have an empty 3rd floor. And that is what I could use, is that correct?
Correct.
And we're not sure of how many in that unit or any of that, but that's what I could use.
correct,
And for how long we give it to any of those issues.
yeah.
Right.
All right,
Can I
so,
just clarify, you're talking about strike 4 and 5 here?
so we
and
would be,
6, 7, 8 read.
yeah, so in
Okay.
definitions, we would be striking definition 4 and 5, which is currently operator occupied short-term rental, and then owner adjacent short-term rental. So those would come out,
Okay,
and then the new 4, 5, and 6 would be what's currently listed as 6, 7, and 8 in this, the draft tonight, that's it before us tonight.
right, we just have to
Yeah,
clarify fees.
yeah,
and
then we have to
whatever.
clarify a couple things, but does
Okay.
that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Okay. So now, to Kenny's point about the fees, can we just, we can just have a one size, we can just figure out what the fee
Yeah,
is.
So that's a separate, we wouldn't have that in the zoning ordinance anyways.
So
So they had it, so like I said, I couldn't actually see their actual ordinance.
I emailed it to you just so you have it.
Oh, that's all right, yeah.
So now that these are the new definitions, I'm just trying to figure out what, so we're gonna, especially because this is the zoning part, we're gonna strike the fee language.
Yep.
But we can talk about, in the zoning ordinance, we can limit bedrooms or total number of guests. So I guess the question becomes, do these numbers make sense, or do we think we want to do something else? So if it's limited share, which is the owner occupied, the owner or owners, I guess, would be in 1 bedroom, and then,
So that part's not, so I think the part that's, so it's 3.
additional,
Three
Yeah.
additional bedrooms.
So
right,
you have a 4-bedroom house, you're hanging out in one of them, you have the opportunity to rent up to the other 3,
The scenarios could be,
yeah, up to 6 people,
right.
yeah.
but you know, you could be a whole family in a big house and still rent out 3.
But I think to get, to your
Yeah.
point earlier, Gideon, I think that was a woman on, was it Russell? And her house was massive. So that could be an instance where she had,
She rented out 2.
but let's say she had 5 bedrooms, if we,
don't have a cap.
so we've got to decide about,
And then last night, last meeting we were at, we also talked about the scenario of, you have a large bedroom, someone puts in more beds in there, and so you end up with ability to have 4 people in each bedroom, that could be 12 people, that's what you guys, that's the scenario we went through at the last meeting. And so Boston's way of addressing that is to limit it to 3 guest bedrooms or 6 guests. So
Yep.
you don't get more than 6 guests no matter what in the house.
That's, yeah.
And I thought that was a smart move from that, because, yeah, you could in theory end up with one of those, you know, queen, twin bunk
Bunk
beds.
beds.
And have a whole family live in one bedroom, and each bedroom is filled with a lot of people, so, that did seem like a way to address that as well.
so I think for, so let me, so I guess the question I have is why the numbers are different between the owner, operator, owner occupied, and owner occupied, because in the second scenario, the owner's not there, so there would potentially be an extra bedroom that could be used for short-term rentals.
It's a whole home, so, let's say if you have a 5-bedroom house, and you usually use 3, or, I mean, I think everyone is just putting in if they're guessing they're trying to limit it, but not overly restricted.
Okay.
So if you, like, obviously in a house that only has 2 bedrooms, you're not gonna be able to do 5 bedrooms of rentals. And so that's, in our regulations, we talk about that. You know, this is the maximum, so it's like in zoning, it's creating the maximum box. This is the maximum number in any instance, but then the regulations would identify what the limitations are based on. So if you have 2 habitable bedrooms, then that's all you.
So-
What
I'm
do we
sorry.
have if somebody registers, you know, there's a lot of discrepancy on the property cards, what the assessor says, what zoning says with our properties in town.
There shouldn't
Will that be something that you see potentially as part of a regulation, that when someone registers to operate, that will all be verified, how many bedrooms are legally in that dwelling? So that we don't have to worry about, you know, people using basements or attics or, you know, illegal.
Yeah, the first step is that they,
So, and then I guess the second part of that is I wonder what the average, it seems like the average home in Watertown is, it's unusual to have, like, I wonder what the numbers say, how many bedrooms we have in dwellings, in a typical, you know, what's the majority of,
there's no typical, I mean, this town varies substantially.
well, I mean, you know, in real estate.
Probably
I
3,
would
realistically,
say
probably 3
is
bedrooms,
Probably
For a single family.
or even in
is
an
common,
apartment.
right? Yeah, it's like
probably.
3 bedrooms is, I mean, Boston, big city,
I think
10
our
guests, I
average
can
house-
see 4 cars.
I think most single families have 3 bedrooms at a minimum, and they go up from there. And, there's obviously a few out there that are less, but there's quite a few that are more, so.
Well, you know, when I think about the cases that come and how we regulate parking based on the number of bedrooms and,
But we barely ever
I-
see any single families, because they're just, yeah, when you have more than 4 bedrooms, for the 5th bedroom, is 5th and 6th, it triggers an additional parking spot in a single family. So,
right, so my point is, this seems a little high for Watertown, 5 bedrooms or 10 guests.
We're not talking about that one yet.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we were,
Nope,
I thought
still
that
on
was
limited
what you
share.
were.
Still
Oh, we're
in-
just sticking to 6?
We might as
right
well,
now?
so we can.
Yeah, limited, yeah.
Sorry.
We're just gonna try to
We
work.
jumped ahead,
Yeah,
okay.
try to work through
Sorry.
each of them so, I mean,
So
that,
3 guest bedrooms or 6 guests?
whichever is fewer, so,
And that's if you're there.
correct.
That's correct.
So again, if it's a standard 3-bedroom, then the best you can get is Yeah.
Are there any, I didn't look ahead in terms of,
No,
Part-
you could just rent out the
Two.
two other rooms,
Yep, three people in each,
3 people in each.
yeah,
Okay.
Or they could do the master, that's 4 people,
yeah.
a 2-bedroom, just depends.
I'm comfortable
Are
with
there
those
any,
numbers to move this forward with
do
to the
we-
council.
I'm trying to remember, I know there's a link about parking and rules for off-site.
It's not a.
I don't remember.
It's track changes.
Yeah, just a track
Oh,
change
it's
to,
tracking.
it's just a note for us to discuss later.
Because you brought it up at the last meeting. So I added it in here.
Okay, I guess I feel more comfortable, given our reality of allowing more capacity if we regulate the parking.
Okay.
But what do you have any thoughts, Ken, on that?
I'm ready to move that forward to the council.
Number 6.
Yep.
Tony?
Can I just ask, on that, limited chair, it seems to me, I'm just trying to get the definition, the words the same, so that's what Cape Boston uses it, but I like the word you used down below, where it said room share. It seems a more, better explanation of what limited share is. The word room share there, and then you say home share. So if you use room share and home share seem to work better than limited share.
So you mean just sync up the definitions in 6, 7, and 8 with what Gideon has in the
Well, or
comment?
just take the number 6, we're on number 6, right?
And
Limited
so
share.
call it owner occupied room share?
Yeah, it might,
Are we taking out those definitions
But
altogether?
we are gonna,
He's saying on number 6, instead of saying limited, say room share.
yeah.
Just use
You
these.
have little points down
Yeah.
below.
Because
The
the one
red house, the house
underneath
is
that,
red.
it says
Who
home
cares?
share, so it would give a little bit of clarity of the room share versus a home share.
That, I've got no problem with that.
The one positive
Yeah,
about
I could-
using Boston's
could
language
care
is
less.
that they're usually good.
Is that what?
It creates consistency with different.
well, I
Because,
think,
and Boston's has been through litigation and,
Gideon, I think you're fully
Because-
aware, this council has no prerogative in keeping consistency across our verbiage. How dare you imply that
so,
we do?
anyway,
I don't care, I had a hard time with the limited share too, because it doesn't convey what you.
well,
I
what I
could
would
care
say
less.
is that if you say room share, to me, that implies they're only allowed to use a room. We're not really saying that.
Well, that's why there's a
So,
definition, so that's.
Because
what
it really is a home share, but you're there.
This is
where the
like me,
home share-
this is like me
To-
looking at the
I
dictionary
could
and
just-
seeing
if
the
I
word
could
I
just
don't know and
finish,
being like,
Ken,
where's the
to-
definition? It's right there. Yeah, who cares what we call it? The definition's right there.
I think words are good to convey, so people aren't guessing what we mean.
Definition's right next to
So
it.
to Tony's
It's right there.
point, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand, yeah, I see what you're saying, so I withdraw my suggestion. I see what you're saying, because in a sense, it's one person present. But the big difference, though, seems to me in the home, the home share, you're doing it to one, what did you call it, one appointment, one?
Party,
One unit.
one rental
One unit, one.
contract,
Yeah, one reservation,
yeah.
so one person, period. I mean, it
One
could be
entity.
whole family, it's one reservation.
one party,
Right,
yeah.
so that's a little different than,
Yep.
that's fine.
But so we're using the definition above, and then in the requirements,
We'll do the same.
we'll spell out the,
Did the fee, I know this, I know Gideon, you didn't want us to talk about that with you, but the fees per reservation or per dwelling, as far as the 6% and the 3%? I'm trying to remember.
so
Ken,
Six-
so
it's per,
is there
per
any difference
reservation,
between-
it's
60
per,
cents, yeah, that's
So
per,
if-
It's per reservation.
it's per reservation.
it's per reservation.
Because
per
it would be a
occupancy.
separate,
You're talking about the fees that Boston's charging?
no,
No,
the
it's
state
just
fees,
the occupancy fees.
the occupancy fees.
So in a way,
That would be per-
Boston's evening out by
64.
No,
having
no, no,
the
no.
200.
No, so
because
that,
You'd only
that,
have one reservation where you could have $75
These
versus.
fees are.
those fees are their registration fees with
Yeah, I
the
know, I
city,
know. Yeah,
not
I know.
having to do anything with the taxes.
No, I know, but in terms of
Sure.
what people will end up paying.
Yeah, I mean, when we can
Okay.
get to the fees later, when we get to regulations, I would just suggest we have a one-size-fit-all fee to make it easy.
Absolutely. Well, I think we should definitely address that when we get to that section.
All right, so,
And this is, I guess, owner-operator, we'll get to the definition of what that is.
So number 6, you said you're all in agreement, we cross out that we're calling it a limited share. And we're gonna have the definition, and then we'll also pull it down below under number 1.
yes.
Because,
For consideration, that's all.
Sure, yeah.
I find the word occupancy confusing when we're talking about this. I wonder if it's possible to use the word reservation. No, okay. He's shaking his head, so it must be.
Yeah.
But
Because you actually have to be there.
so I think down in,
Supposed to
in
reserve, yeah.
requirements, we could say, that's where we can spell out the reservations, right, Gideon, that in the limited share, that could be multiple reservations, but the home share has to be one reservation.
Okay.
but this is, as, you know, the definition, which isn't highlighted here, was owner-operator. Because if I look under definitions, you have, or primary leaseholder was the other thing. So I'm okay with going with 6 if we address who's allowed to be an operator.
So then we would just change it to short-term rental operator?
You're saying, because you have an issue with this.
So Gideon and I had this conversation the other day, just, it's kind of separate, but because I understand Lisa's tying it back into other definitions.
If,
Because I know originally you and I were opposed to
yeah,
tenants being able to do this. And I asked Gideon about this the other day because I was still very confused about it. And Gideon, well, I don't want to speak, but Gideon, in a nutshell, Gideon explained to me that in a zoning ordinance, we can't, because of fair housing laws, et cetera, we can't differentiate between landlords and tenants. So the way the proposed regulations get around that is requiring the landlord to give written authorization, the thinking being almost no landlord would give written authorization to a tenant to do Airbnb.
And then I also want to acknowledge that Boston did choose to go down that path anyways, and identify that it's, but, you know, we don't know the context of how Boston's integrated into their zoning code, and how they, you know, we're calling it an accessory use. An accessory use of a single family, you can't differentiate between a owner occupied and a rental occupied single family, and the same with a two-family. The use is not the type of person, or it's a fair housing type of situation where we're not
wait,
differentiating.
can you have an example when that comes into being? Because we've only had owners come when it, like, to zone ZBA.
All I'm talking about is in our zoning ordinance.
Yeah.
We don't differentiate, and we work really hard to ensure that our ordinance is neutral when it comes to the type of use, not the type of user.
So if somebody comes in front of ZBA looking to do renovations on a single family, there's no inquiry made into whether or not that's an owner-occupied single family or a rental single family.
Although in every
But-
case, the owner has to sign
Yeah.
an application to show that they have permission to ask for a special permit. So, and that's the same with this. In no instance can someone just come in as a tenant and apply for something without the owner's signature.
No, I understand that. I'm just, do you have an example of when a renter would apply to do something, or if they never been given permission to?
I know a renter that's been here for 15 years, I'm just making it, you know, I mean, I do, but someone's been living here for 15 years in a single family, they're a close friend of the family, they have a lifetime rental of this friend's house. They have a great relationship, they go somewhere every summer for 2 months, and they want to rent it out to visiting students for a school in an adjacent community that both the owner and the renter have worked at, or whatever. There you go, there's a scenario. That owner knows that renter very well and would be more than happy to allow them to use the house for short-term rental. And so that owner would finally sign off on it. That was my story.
That, I understand that we talked that example before. So, okay, I just, from things I've read in other cities or liability when stuff has happened, but we
But I-
want to go forward, then,
I think you,
That's
well,
okay.
I guess two things. One, your original point was just to make sure that the language coincided, so where.
You just take
in
out the word
three-
owner.
Yeah,
Right.
in 3 what?
Take out the word owner, consists,
so in 6, 7, and 8, it would be short-term rental operator
Yeah.
instead of
Owner
owner
operator.
operator.
yeah.
But I thought that was your original point.
Yeah, that's why I was confused. I
Okay.
mean,
Yeah.
so you're saying you should have changed that?
Yes.
Gideon?
Yeah, so Gideon just plugged these in here as a kind of a placeholder for us, and now we're kind of updating the language.
No, but I mean, this was what was presented.
No.
for 3.
So, yeah, so that language stays the same. We then have to update the language in 6, 7, and 8 to be consistent with number 3.
What? Okay, I thought we couldn't differentiate, but we're going to put them both in there.
No, we're just gonna say we're just gonna, right now where it says owner operator.
Right.
Where it's gonna be updated to say short-term rental operator. So then it's consistent with the
But
previous
this is
definition.
Boston's language,
What's currently showing there is 6, 7, and 8
is from the Boston ordinance.
came from Boston, and now we're updating it to work
I
for
guess
us.
I would, I don't know if before this goes, we move to council, if we can get clarification if there's been a ruling on that. Or
Oh.
I can do my own research, but,
You're talking about whether a tenant can do this?
yeah, if that,
I just, after.
but for now,
For now, I think we should move forward this way. I did just, I shot an email to Mark Rich and, I'm blank, yeah, just to,
okay, great.
so that, well, because again, I didn't expect us to finish this tonight,
Oh,
but.
okay.
If you read, then number 6 says you think it's going to be read, as you think it's going to look.
Sure, so it would say, consists of a private bedroom or shared space in a short-term rental operator's primary residence.
So that means that if I'm renting, I'm a renter, I can rent, I could have a reservation for 1 or 2 rooms.
If your landlord,
The landowner
right,
says it's okay to do that.
yes,
Okay.
And then the next sentence would say the operator would be present during rental.
Yeah.
right.
All word owner is
Yeah.
changed to operator in these 3.
And so are we, subject to us sorting out parking
Sounds
when we
good.
get to it, are we okay with the 3 guest bedrooms or 6 guests, whichever is fewer? Kenny?
Yes.
Okay, great. So then on 7, we'll be updating owner operator again.
Yep.
We're gonna be removing the fee. And then for the whole unit, the home share, the numbers are 5 bedrooms or 10 guests, whichever is fewer. But I presume, based on your answer to the last one, that you're okay with these numbers.
I am.
Lisa? I know it sounds like a lot, but I think to your point earlier, where you're limited by the
Whichever is
actual,
fewer, okay.
and by the actual circumstances of
You
the
could
house.
also say
That's
it's no
fine.
more than,
That's fine, the way it is. I mean, I can see people renting houses, for weddings and reunions or whatever, big house.
yeah, it'll actually be limited, because I think in some of those scenarios, if someone's renting a larger house, they could easily have more people in there, but this will limit it.
Right.
So does that mean that I could have a 2-bedroom house, but I could have 10 people there? No, it would be 2 bedrooms. It
Well,
would be
there's,
shorter, it would be, I'm sorry, so,
No,
there's regulations in the regulations, when they apply for it, it would have to be deemed to be able to fit, so the bedrooms would have to be
Wait, say that again?
Technically, yes,
So
but technically, yes, practically, no.
Well, no, you could have 10, how, we're not, because if you have, we're saying it's limited to 5, you can't have more than 5. So if you only have 2, you could still rent and have 10 people, right?
You could in theory, if the.
Technically, yes, practically, no. Yeah.
What?
the
You're
bedrooms-
both talking.
Bedrooms would have to be this, would have to be the size of this room.
ability to have occupancy.
Because it's based on the size of the room, how many occupants can be in that room.
Where,
The whole day's gonna
per zoning or,
people living in these.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
but,
yeah.
time out.
Did I get an answer to your question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a little unclear. Is that per, are you saying, Gideon, because per zoning? Because it would be unclear to people.
It would be zoned.
Well, you said that the bedrooms have to be a certain size.
That's based on the registration process, so it would be, there'd be an inspection of the.
Well, then, I think it should be a clause in here that's, you know, comma, whichever is fewer, and also either confirmed, allowable by registration, or what's the language?
Under requirements,
Yeah, it's in
it says a
requirements.
dwelling unit or bedroom offered for short-term rentals shall comply with all standards and regulations promulgated by DCDP.
So I think
But-
under the definition section, that last sentence, the occupancy part, I think that should only be on the section down below. And the definition should just say that a limited share consists of the private, the private bedroom, shared space, and the occupied primary residence, and the home shares. And so the occupancy section is actually down below in the requirements underneath.
Okay.
Instead of in the definition?
I just threw it there thinking that we would use it like this.
Sure.
But not.
It's
so
not
So
how
then,
Boston
so
has it?
then up in definitions, it would say, limited share consists of a private bedroom or shared space and a short-term rental operator's primary residence. The short-term rental operator would be present during rental. Definite, end of definition.
Is that the
Then,
definition?
then down in the requirements, that's when, so we're gonna break out the occupancy from the definition and put it in the requirement section, which would then be followed immediately by a dwelling unit or bedroom offered for short-term rentals shall comply with all standards and regulations.
Well, where are people going to find those? How are they going to
It's just
know?
right below. And there's gonna be a sheet. There'll be a-
Wait, so you want to take
Where,
out the
I see
limited
this
piece?
chart here. What do you mean?
The limiting language is gonna move down to requirements. So the definition is just gonna be,
Oh, okay.
it's not, the definition above isn't gonna reference
The occupancy,
occupancy.
but the
That will show
requirement
up,
section
the
below is-
requirement
will say-
section
will-
below will talk about occupancy. Your point is different. You
I just
you
want
want
people to
people
find
to
it.
be able to look at this
Yeah.
So that's
and
where you go
figure
to the
out,
requirements. So that's why I'm saying it needs to be in the requirements, because in the requirements you say, this is what's allowed, and below it says.
Yeah.
You need to follow the rules and regulations
Sure.
as established by the DCDP, which is
Yeah.
also the building office.
I think what Lisa wants is she wants it explicitly spelled out in here so people know how many people per bedroom.
Well, so I guess,
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I have no problem if you don't like, I don't know if you're saying you took this from Boston, but you're saying there's problems with it. So if you want to move it, that's fine, but either way, it's not clear at all to the layperson to read this to say, I have this many bedrooms, I want to do home share, I can do that. Because,
not gonna say
lo
that.
and behold, the size of my bedroom doesn't comply. Well, where do I find that? It needs to be,
the inspector would say
It's
it.
not us to determine that, like, I can't.
our zoning, you just said our zoning determines
I must have misspoke, I'm sorry.
that
You
it's
can't
spelled out.
determine the number of people that can be in a room from zoning. It's a code, it's a code.
Building code?
Yeah, there's more than one code, and they all
There are
limit.
books
the
and
amount.
books and books of codes.
It's like this long.
Yeah.
Well, number 4 though says, the dwelling unit or bedroom offered for short shall comply with building code requirements for occupancy. So that says building code. And you're saying that
That's what you say, you don't regulate it.
So that language would stay.
That is, that.
Right.
I think what you're saying is that that doesn't give the person who's doing it any information. They'd have to go.
Yeah,
to the
they actually,
books.
yeah, they have to go and get registered and they'll find out.
So part of the
Yeah, but
registry.
people want to have general idea of what they can do.
Gideon, if I may,
Come in.
we had this exact same argument when we were doing the Community Preservation Committee, and it was, the language was, you need to do this in compliance with, and it referenced a statute. And then the committee here felt we should put in that statute, because then people only have to go to one spot to figure everything out. We talked about that for 6 months, made this huge thing, sent it to legal counsel. Legal counsel said, nope, don't do that. Reference it as it is. Don't include everything in there. So just, we do this all the time, and we shouldn't, because when we send this to legal counsel, they're gonna tell us not to. So,
No, yeah, I
It's
mean,
not-
I understand.
Let me just say that building code, or it says the Department of Community Development Planning Regulations, there are things that are in there, they're not by state, they're also by our town, and that
Zoning
people should, let me just finish. It should be easy to understand when you read this, to, I don't know, maybe, for example,
Can I
the cap is, because you were saying down here, it is going to say limited to 5 bedrooms or 10 guests, whichever is fewer, and then you have an asterisk or
No,
something
so
that
I'll just be clear again, this is an ordinance, and it's the zoning ordinance, so we're
Right.
not regulating building code. So-
I'm not talking about
Yeah, but-
regulating building code.
So what we're saying is that this is the maximum number that you're allowed, and then they need to come in and apply. Most likely, if they want 2 people in their bedroom, it's gonna be fine, but if they wanna try to push it, they wanna do two sets of bunk beds in there, that's where it's gonna be, someone is not gonna get a clear answer. But you can do a handout if we wanna get to that stage. Cambridge does much more. Boston just says, you register and we inspect it, and that's what you get. But, we're not gonna get into all the details of, the zoning ordinance doesn't get into that for any of the other sections. So, there's 2 bedrooms. If you have 2 bedrooms, generally, you can rent it out to 4 people. But there might be some caveat. Some people have a full 3rd floor that's one huge bedroom officially. Maybe that ends up being rented out to the whole family. But it's through inspections.
And that's where, in the draft regulations, it says, in number 4, prior to issuing or renewing a certificate of registration, department must conduct an inspection to verify that each dwelling unit and bedroom to be rented to short-term renters, boom, 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 boom.
So you guys are fine with saying what the maximum is, and then people will have to be sure that it complies with the building code required for occupancy when they come in and register?
Because
We can say that, the max is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think realistically, what's gonna happen is nobody who's doing this is gonna look at the ordinance, they're gonna look at the regulations.
Well, because in Cambridge, we had originally said, it says, it kind of spells out max in more than one place in a way. Dwelling unit should not be greater than the number of lawful bedrooms in the dwelling unit. Maximum number of bedrooms can be rented overnight or short-term is 3. The maximum number of guests or renters is 9. So that's clear, but I agree, Gideon and everyone, that instead of in the definitions, if you want to move that down to requirements, that's fine with me.
Okay. So I think we're good on 6 and 7. So then, number 8, this, I think, for me, last time, was what was most confusing, even with this lovely flow chart from Cambridge. So, and I don't want to, if I'm misspeaking for you, Lisa, let me know. I think after the first meeting, we were under the impression that we were going to limit short-term rentals to the owner occupied would be either a 2 or a 3. But based on this language with a renter being able to get permission, that kind of almost deregulated the whole thing, which Counselor Woodland was happy with.
Well, if you, I don't understand how a renter could get the ability to rent out a different unit that they
No, they
don't have
can't. That-
control
this
of.
one has to
Yeah,
be owner
this one has to be owner occupied.
No, but so, well, because owner occupied and the other thing was owner adjacent was very, very different, right?
No, it's the same. B is one dwelling unit rented only as a whole unit to one party of short-term renters at any one time and not rented as separate bedrooms to separate parties. The problem was that we were doing that in the same breath as looking at A.
Yeah, exactly.
Very confusing.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there was, and there was people that interpret that, meaning that you could do more than one dwelling unit. So if you had a 6-family, and this is where it started, the what ifs started to escalate. It was like, well, if you have a 6-family, then you could do 5. And it's like, and I said, no, it's one dwelling. If you own a building, no matter what size it is, you can rent out one additional unit.
Okay.
And so that's our old language.
That's it.
And the new language is really that, but in Boston, they're also only limited to 2 or 3 families.
Okay.
So we have to decide if we really, what level of limitation. We're fine, at the staff level, we're fine with any of them. We don't see any issues limiting it at 2 or 3 family or 6 family or at the same trigger point that we do with multifamily. You know, I don't see, I'm sure that we could come up with scenarios where it could be a problem, but
So in Boston, it limits it to 2 families, 3 families,
That are
and
owner
also they can only use one, they can only
Rent out one of them.
rent out one
Yeah,
of the other units.
yeah, even if they have a 3.
So then, if we go with that, where it's a max of short-term rental of one other unit, I don't think we have to limit it to 2s or 3s. But, feel free to chime in.
If you're gonna do that, then it could be any number of units, right? I mean, as long as you're saying only one of them could be used.
yeah, so if you're an owner, you can rent and you live there. It's not just an owner occupied situation, no matter what number of units are in the building, you can have one more Airbnb. And it's for only a single, what do you use for the word?
Bed reservation.
Just unit.
Reservation.
For a single, yeah, it's a single user group rather than multiple. So you couldn't rent out a whole bunch of bedrooms separately to a bunch of different groups. It's just a single unit.
So why don't I force a building as, I own the building, there's 4 units in it. Each unit is a 3-bedroom unit. I live in one. I could use one of the other ones of the 3, only one, as our Airbnb, right? And there are 3 bedrooms in that unit. Do I have to do only one reservation for all 3, or can I say that there's 3 reservations? No.
One,
Single unit.
one reservation,
Like the home share.
home share,
Just like the home share.
exactly. So that may,
I like having just, I think that's good, and then, because that also touches on like concern about taking affordable units off. So if you limit it to 1,
right, but we don't have to limit the type of building then, because we're limiting it to one other unit. So then in that instance, we're gonna keep your original language, correct, Gideon?
Seems, I'm reading it, one.
why don't we want to say 4 families?
Well, we're not gonna say anything then.
Oh.
Because it doesn't
okay.
matter if it's a 2, a
Okay.
3, a 4, a 6, an 8, because you can only rent one other unit.
Yeah, you're right, in the original definition,
'Cause
you
it-
have 4 or fewer dwelling units, which we don't need, but.
Is it? So I guess it doesn't affect condo buildings, they would have their own rules, and you don't.
Which might even prohibit.
So if you own 3 condos in one building, You still could just do one, or no, actually, you could do 3 home shares, right?
No, you can only do the one you live in, or an adjacent one. So I guess that's the clarification of, if you're a owner occupied unit, can you do your own and, I don't think this has fixed that.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to avoid.
I
But
think
otherwise,
that
I'm
it's-
okay with the
there-
one.
You're allowed to do, because you're obviously, if you're in a single family, you're allowed to do the limited share, and then when you're gone, the home share.
Mhm.
So in the other scenario,
You could do owner adjacent and do either of the other two at the same time.
Yeah,
you can do your,
Yeah.
you as a, you could rent out your
Yeah.
rooms in your unit,
Yeah,
but you.
could also rent out your whole unit if you're,
But are we gonna,
it's
so
your-
that's where we get into a limit on how long you're gone. Because otherwise, you're never there. It's just a home share, and you'd make a lot more money than renting out. And that's how you
right,
eliminate
so,
affordable.
We could just, I feel like we could have a caveat that you can either do you can do one and two, or you can do 3, but you can't really do. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, the room share
Mhm.
is the way that the new definition reads. Well, the home share is,
you could still do it. That language.
If the way you got it now, you could do, you have 4 units, you live in one, you can do the 1 unit out, and then you can do either A or B in your own unit,
Yeah.
right? You
Mhm.
can do, if you're only there, if you're president, you
Yeah.
can do a room.
you should be able to
If
do
you're going
that.
Yeah.
on vacation, you could do, so,
Yeah.
But then should you be able to do?
I think that's fine. I don't care if you did those things.
so just to make sure I'm clear, we're talking about 4-unit condominium, somebody owns,
Whether it's condo, I mean,
Yeah.
apartment condo.
Building. Yeah.
Building,
yeah, I think you can do both,
Yeah. You can do both, yeah.
yeah.
so this,
Well-
does this take off, or does this mean, by agreeing to this, we're taking a rental unit off the market,
1,
one?
yep. So Lisa, Lisa, your concern for home share, the whole unit, is putting some sort of qualifier about how long, because I know Boston, if it's your primary, you have to be there for 9 months or something, out of a
Yeah.
12-month period. But do we,
Well, yeah, I guess, I mean, because we took out the 7 consecutive days, right? I guess I just don't want to go overboard where now all these units get taken off rental.
but if it was somebody's primary residence,
So in the rules we have, in the regulations, we identify that you need to show proof, which is, one way of showing proof is that you actually you have a residential exemption. So that's an easy, if you have it, and it's also a way to check it. And that gets checked very regularly, because, and then there's some other additional documentation to show that that's your primary residence.
Yeah.
And then, so Boston also requires that every year. They require you need to resubmit every year. Cambridge, what we have is 5 years. So there is the 1 year, I can see the positives of that, but it also means that every year there's some final paperwork and more work.
Well, so, I mean, is this suggesting, I'm not trying to get us too far afield. If I am, just, you can tell me, but when we looked at the, cumulative Cambridge, Newton, Salem, short-term rentals up to 6 months, or we're just not there, we haven't decided yet on a limit of how many months, or either you have to live there, or a unit can be used as Airbnb?
So we put it under the regulations. They have to prove, so we didn't do it by the time, the number of months, but all operators shall provide the municipality with proof that one of the units in the structure is used as the operator's primary
I'm sorry,
residence.
where are you reading? I don't,
Draft, under regulations B,
Over here.
registration and eligibility.
okay.
Number three, B3. Either by providing proof of enrollment in the municipality's residential tax exemption program or an affidavit.
Well, isn't there a requirement for getting the residential tax exemption that you have to, it's your primary residence, which would require so many months of living there anyway?
But it's not 9 months, like Boston.
Does anyone know what it is?
You're
Is it 6 months? Is it,
I don't think this is a
I
definitive
thought that was
number.
like
It's not a number.
by federal IRS rules,
Yeah.
what you're,
It's,
registered to vote
yeah,
there.
it's not a number.
It's basically where you
The
file
Watertown.
taxes.
You're making a choice that's.
So you file your tax, where you vote, where you belong to your civic
Domiciliary.
organizations, yeah, it's your domiciliary, it's your classic.
no, but for Watertown,
NU
our rules for eligibility, meeting requirements for residential exemption, there's not.
No, because you can still have a primary residence in a location and not be there for more than 9 months of the year. Like, let's say I am in my home, but I am going back and forth traveling for business, and my intended location where I do everything is still my address, and where I intend to return and still live, that's my address. My primary residence is still me, even though I'm not there for.
So I don't know if you want
whatever
to take it up separately, but I'd hate
Yeah.
to see
It's all fact and circumstance.
Yeah, we can,
open-ended, you know.
like I would
never-ending
imagine, a lot
months
of people switch their residence to Florida for tax purposes.
So none else people
Right.
get the exemption.
So then they don't get get the
Right.
homeowner's exemption from Watertown.
Right, so,
We have two options. One is the homeowner's exemption, or they do the second option.
Yeah.
That's signed under the Payne's and Perjury, saying that the dwelling being used for short-term rental is the operator's primary residence.
right. So we don't have a limit right now on the number of months.
No, 'cause that wouldn't exist in terms of the legal scope of what you consider a primary residence.
Right, but
Boston.
but you could limit the number of months a dwelling is used as short-term rental, is what I'm saying.
Well, that's a totally different question.
Yeah, so that's a different question.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Thank you.
all right. Okay, so. So for the owner adjacent whole unit, we're keeping the original language, correct? Because Boston limited it to,
Yeah. So.
I would-
so the-
but we have to
The
do,
definition is not the same as the,
right.
Yeah,
so B makes sense.
Yep,
1B is describing it.
so then the definition has to,
And then the definition needs to match B.
so then,
Wait, you're saying we're getting rid of A
just, I'd keep this.
altogether?
I'd keep 8 and just keep it as, add the word consists, by the way, consists of an owner occupied building. So that's what you want to take out. In this situation.
Where are you
the
guys reading? I thought you were on requirements 1A.
Lists a single
Well,
secondary unit as a short-term rental.
we're looking at the interplay between the owner adjacent definition and then the requirement on owner adjacent.
Yeah.
Right, so are we getting rid of A?
No, no,
A's being replaced with.
The 6,
A's-
7, 8.
yeah. We're bringing
Okay.
the occupancy maximums, we're removing them from the definition and putting them in A. Which would be, I guess, A, B, and then owner adjacent
1A
becomes C.
becomes 7? I mean, is the language in 7? Home share?
1A, it's the language, occupancy is limited to 3 guests,
So 1A is being struck.
taking the fee out.
Yep.
The only thing, like, this is exactly what I was talking about before, the number of bedrooms shall not exceed the number of lawful bedrooms. That's clear. I thought that language was good, Gideon.
So we can take that part and add it back if you want.
Sure. So
Are you guys okay?
occupancy is limited to three individual bedrooms or 6 guests, whichever is fewer, but the number of bedrooms shall not exceed the number of lawful bedrooms in the unit.
Okay.
That goes to 6.
So just,
6 and,
Lisa's concern is
Yeah, I
about
know.
the legal, so that
I
we
just
are, in
wanted to
our
find where you
previous
guys were.
version, it specifically referenced legal bedroom.
Yeah, well, we don't need that language because it's already in the dwelling unit or bedroom offered, must comply with the other standards.
yeah,
So we don't need that. Yeah,
it's not necessary,
yeah, it's definitely not necessary.
but it's not.
We haven't finished the language for 8 yet.
Right, so I'm wondering, Gideon, do we just take that language from Boston, which says a residential, we'll have to modify it, but a residential unit offered as a short-term rental that is not the owner's primary residence, but that is located within the same dwelling as the primary residence of, it would have to be the short-term rental operator, because we're not limiting it to,
Is that the same as our language number 5 is what,
oh,
the short-term, the original language, the short-term rental? is what-
oh, yep, but now we're removing the,
But it's within a residential building, and you strike out with 4 fewer dwelling units. For all dwelling units, dwelling are owned by the operator.
yep.
And one of the dwelling units in the building is the primary residence of the operator.
So 5 becomes,
5 stays,
You just keep,
keep it, but you just strike out with 4 fewer dwelling units.
yeah, and that becomes the new, well, it becomes the new 8, really. So, so,
Well, I mean, the numbers below are just done. Because 4 is gone, so,
yep,
so 6 is 4,
yep. 7 is 5,
7 is 5,
and then,
and we're not keeping the new 8, it's just being struck out altogether. And 5 is the new.
but the new 5 doesn't distinguish between only having a single secondary unit as a short-term rental. Doesn't make that distinction.
yeah, so we need to add that.
That's why I was saying keep 8.
Yeah, I thought we were keeping 8.
So it's interesting though, if
As
you look
6.
at 1C down below, it does identify that it's one dwelling unit. So I guess the definition you can look at that as well.
I don't have a 1C.
Well, it's gonna be 1C, but
Yeah, it's gotta be 1C. All right, so,
Okay.
What will,
so we need to combine 5 and 8.
Yeah.
what
so-
becomes 1C?
I think what we'll do is we'll leave that for the.
Can you guys talk to me too? Sorry.
Sure, we
I
should
just-
finish this thought though before we do it.
Right, I'm asking where you're at on 1C.
We're-
What is
we're
1C?
trying- We're trying to reconcile 5 and 8 for the definition of the owner adjacent.
So I guess what I would suggest is then is let's not do it right this second, and when you do the draft, do the language then. Because you understand the main
Yeah,
points
I
are,
get it.
you understand what the main points are, you can form the language, yeah.
So we're gonna combine 5 and 8.
So it's not really C, it's going to go into B.
We're up here talking about the
I'm gonna
definition.
merge
Right,
6
but
I'm
you're
merge
gonna
6 and
incorporate
8
it down
to
here.
ensure that it defines it as one unit.
Right?
I mean,
Right, then,
5 and 8,
right,
yeah,
yes.
5 and 8, yeah. Yep, so the main themes being, we want to define it, but then we also want to limit it to
So the one
the one
additional
that you can
unit,
actually
which-
rent out, yeah,
goes in C.
yeah. So, we don't need to draft that language in a second.
Yep,
Yep, I can do that.
okay, so I think those were now, I don't think we had any problems with requirements 2 through 8.
You did.
But we are,
mentioned the state.
Yeah, oh yeah, but you made that change.
Yeah.
I said the state, I didn't say DOR.
Doesn't matter, state's fine.
before you guys go on, can I finish? We can keep, but the number shall not exceed the number of lawful bedrooms. I think is very clear.
It's the same thing as we talked about before with that being as part of the regulations that we highlight in 2 and
Right,
4.
But you're gonna keep that in, you said you were gonna keep that in 7, because I think it's really helpful, Gideon, I think it's really helpful to include that in there, and then I like that you also, under number 2 that says 2 now, offer for short-term rentals comply with standards and regulations promulgated by DC. I think it's clear to have both in there, so if someone's reading this and like, as far as the number of bedrooms.
That's fine. I don't think it changed.
I just wanted to clarify, because you
understand.
guys moved
No.
on, and there was a lot of discussion, and I.
Yep, no, I think that's fine.
I don't, but it doesn't matter.
So I think we should include the lawful bedroom
It's extra
language.
words, but
Sure. Hopefully it helps drives home the point. So there was a change to 3 that's reflected in the current draft in front of us about state and DCDP.
yeah.
Okay,
And then the 9 just was a
okay.
And then the next section,
The 9 just ignore it, he said?
Yeah, it was just, yeah.
Are you on procedural recommendation?
Yeah, so now we're moving over to the draft regulations, unless there was anything else on the amendment in the short-term rentals section.
Sounds good.
Okay. So on to procedural requirements, this was, and Gideon put it in there as a placeholder because it came up last time, the questions about parking.
right, so there was another section that talked about parking under section 5, B5. And so that last time I mentioned that it's
Sorry.
already, the listings must specify the quantity of off-street parking, if any, and include language relative to the winter parking ban. But then I couldn't remember if that may not have been adequate enough, so under the procedural requirements, I added instruction, I should say instructions, for parking and rules and limitations for off-site public parking, because that's a document that they would be providing in advance to the residents.
Where do you mention the winter parking ban? You said
In-
number 5.
5, B5,
The, under, before complaint. B5. I mean, I don't think that should be in there, because our ordinance, you're actually not allowed to park overnight. We only enforce it in the winter, so I don't think winter parking ban is a good way to, I think it's fine to say,
Unless you put in quotes.
include language relative to parking, Watertown parking regulations,
Technically, no. They just choose not to enforce it
because
certain times.
the parking regulations could change.
Oh, maybe.
Do I exist? I don't know.
you do, I'm listening.
So we're,
So instead of saying relative to the winter parking ban, we could say to Watertown parking regulations. To Ken's point, that way you point to a state statute or a town ordinance or regulations, and they could change, and you don't have to change the,
So relative to,
Watertown parking regulations?
unless you guys have another suggestion.
Doesn't matter.
I think that's just more encompassing.
Is that means you're gonna keep are you gonna keep the one under procedural requirements, A, are you keeping it?
Yeah, it's going to appear in both places. So it'll be A1C, and then will also appear in 5 with the change suggested by Lisa.
so you think that's okay in procedural requirements to add that C? That makes sense. I do have too many ands in there, I guess. Instruction for parking, instruction for parking.
rules and limitations instead of parking and rules?
So, okay, just strike out that here.
Yeah.
Add S and,
Yeah, I don't think that's,
and then B, I added the word registration and eligibility. There was, and again, this is idea, maybe designed by anyone else. So, there were some comments about the affordability restrictions and some other things, and so I realized when I was reading this that the registration also is identifying what's, if you're eligible. It's not like it's a given that you're gonna be. And so I.
Wait, can you say that again? I thought, that sounded good, but I didn't quite catch.
So, B is registration and eligibility, so you're
Yeah.
registering and you also are identifying if you're eligible. So some of these different plans, nothing changed except for number 4, I added is an eligible unit, including not having affordability restrictions. And there's way more detail that I could add to that, like Boston has a bunch of different criteria, but it's, so it even gets into if someone has say, a floating, a Section 8 voucher, they're not allowed to either, but they're violating their federal.
I think,
What do you mean it's getting into affordable? Or you're just talking about you added D, is that,
so D,
okay.
but I wonder if in B3, if it should be, when I looked at Boston's, I thought there were 2 that would maybe make sense to add. So we would have 3A, B, and then I guess it would be, the 2 ones I thought from Boston that were good were following residential units are not eligible to be offered as short-term rentals. One is residential units designated as below market rate or income restricted that are subject to affordability covenants or that are otherwise subject to. And then number 2 is residential units subject to any requirement of local, state, or federal law that prohibits the leasing or subleasing of a unit or use of the unit as a short-term rental. So I don't know if that becomes 3B, you could do a
3C,
3, yeah, it might have to be 3C, and then little I, little II.
And,
That sounds good.
So restrictions and eligibility,
yeah, 3.
so would it be
3, so it goes A, and then on the other side is B.
Yeah.
And then I just want to make it abundantly clear that those,
Well, there's just because 3 starts with all operators shall provide the municipality with proof that one of the units, blah, 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 is used as the operator's primary residence, either by, so the affordability restriction piece doesn't belong in 3. right?
well, eligibility. Oh, yeah, oh, so it could be a 4 then.
Yeah, it'd be.
Okay, I'm
it'd be
sorry.
section-
So,
that's what eligibility is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Force, it'd be section 4, so, yeah. C
4,
in that
I'm
section.
sorry, and it would,
So D is an eligible unit including not having affordability restrictions, which was their header for their section that talked about it must not be designated as a below market rate or restricted, is that what you were saying?
well, so I think you probably, yeah, so I think, to Kenny's point, because I wasn't looking at it,
Yeah.
so it would go 1, 2, 3 has A and B, then maybe a new paragraph 4 that would say, the following residential units are not eligible to be offered as short-term rentals.
So it would be 4 would be eligibility,
Sure, yeah.
and then
And then 5, I think is part of
Was it
issuing or renewing, we would have to verify that it's not,
so 5 is the previous 4 would be 5.
Yeah.
Renumber the rest of it.
yeah, so then renumber it to 5, 6, 7. So,
And eligibility was primarily the.
Well, 4 would just read whatever Anthony just said about the language that Boston took for ensuring that
It's in the
we
PDF
explicitly
you just
disqualify affordable restricted units.
1 and 2, right?
yeah, it's
I,
I, or A, 1, 2, yeah.
Meetings than that.
I already forwarded you, and
On page 3 of the PDF that he
Yeah.
emailed to you.
So then I think 5 still works, because we're saying these units are not eligible. The new 5 works, because as part of the issuing or renewing, we confirm that it does not have an affordability restriction. 6 then gets updated with Lisa's new language, new 6 gets updated, and then old 6 just becomes new 7.
Can the booking agent be the same as the operator?
Yeah,
Okay,
well, actually, I had a question on
I didn't look at the,
that. Let's do that one
Yeah, because I
away.
think
Define what a booking-
we didn't, and that was one of the notes from last time, was that we didn't
you did a
define.
good job though,
booking
Gideon, I have to
agent.
say.
Yeah,
Don't see in definitions.
yeah, that was one of the notes we had last time.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a few other ones that I was
And Boston has a really simple definition, just any person or entity that facilitates reservations or collects payment for short-term rental on behalf of or for an operator.
We just add that definition to the definition section.
Yeah.
Yeah, is it on the first page of Boston's? Well, Boston actually keeps a list of those that are ineligible.
Right. Okay, so if we add the definition for booking agent, we're good on that one.
Yeah.
Were there any issue, oh,
Sorry, go ahead,
No.
I'll circle back.
no,
Since we're in the definition section, I did notice, and this has been bugging me, that, I'm sorry, I thought Boston actually did it, that they're using 28 days because of February.
February.
And we took 30 because that's what everyone else was doing.
Isn't the state 31?
But so does that mean anyone who rents in February, that's illegal? Like,
No.
29 days?
so I noticed Boston did 28 days, so.
Yeah, the state has a different,
I think it's 31 for the state.
And
but we can make it whatever we want,
Yeah,
right?
so we can make it 28 days if we want, it's just,
Wasn't there somebody else who did 28?
Boston's doing it, but.
Was it in Denver? I don't know if it's because it just makes it more clear you're not on a month-to-month lease, or
I just.
you
I
think
it's
28
fine, it's
days
good,
as
but I
in
just- I'm
4,
weird.
7 days times 4, as in 4 weeks, or?
It's the shortest month is 28 days, so. You guys decide.
Anthony, didn't you say the agent definition was on? the top page?
And
Oh, it is at the top.
it's at the top. I mean, do you have, Lisa, Kenny, do you have any
I don't have any strong feelings.
about the number of days?
No, I was just curious, again, like month to month, if that somehow makes it more clear, it's like 4 times a week, I don't know. If KP Law would have any advice or not, but
I mean, I think,
It's not worth, I mean, I think you just need.
do 30 days,
I feel like you should use 28,
okay.
and
or it could be 30, 31, or 29.
1 month.
I wouldn't do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it would either,
Yeah. I wouldn't say 1 month.
yeah, I wouldn't say 1 month.
It's 31, I
That
think,
could
in the
be-
statute.
Yeah, I had it written down. I don't really,
I'm pretty sure they had 30 as well.
it doesn't really matter to me one way or another. I mean, do we think if it's a period of less than 28 days, so, because a tenant at will is what, 30? Well, I guess it depends on the amount of days in a month.
Yes, no, in fact, that's my point, is that
Yeah.
in February, it's 28 days.
Yeah, so I think less than 28 days, because the shortest month, that makes sense, I think. Because then the shortest month is February, so you could still have a tenancy at will for the month of February.
It's not an issue for short term, it's that we're defining it so that now it's saying.
The state is not, the state definition is a short-term rental is a rental that is not for more than 31 consecutive calendar days. But I think we can,
Make-
And this is for a duration of less than.
so maybe we,
Maybe that's, I mean, again, the only thing I think is related somehow to not taking off, avoiding conflict with the rentals.
So by them saying not more than, that's addressing it, because the longest months are 31.
Yeah.
So theirs is right, ours is wrong. So you either have to pick 28 or 31, and then you have to change.
I like, let's just use the state language to be consistent, so.
Rather than a duration of less than, it should be
A
a duration of.
Not more than.
not more
that's
than
what it is,
31 consecutive calendar days.
More than 31. We have to say calendar?
No, I don't think we need to change it either, but whatever.
I mean,
Moving forward.
I would just put it in, that's the state language, so that way to be consistent with the state language. Not more, for not, so not, a duration of not more than
30 consecutive days.
30, well, the state is 31, yeah,
I changed that.
okay.
But one last thing,
And then that language will be reflected everywhere it says that. It's in, yeah. So
So here's
it'd be
really,
to change that in the proposed zoning amendment too.
that's what I was thinking.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah,
It's in
that's where-
definitions twice too. It's in 1 and 2, okay. All right,
And actually, street spots,
all right, perfect.
so
it's also in the real definition.
in the Boston language under operator,
Mm-hmm.
it says, a natural person who's the owner of the residential unit, he or she seeks to offer short-term rental. Only one owner may be registered as an operator on the short-term rental registry for a residential unit. It shall be unlawful for any other person, even if that person is an owner and meets qualifications of primary resident, to offer a residential unit for short-term residential rental. So, again, that's my question of owner versus rental, because it says in here, that language, even if you meet the qualification of a primary resident, that doesn't mean you're an owner. And only owners can operate short-term rentals. So it's on the first.
Yeah, the first definition
Of the Boston.
of
the
Boston.
Boston ordinance.
So
So that's
what's the,
a question,
what's the?
Anthony said he's gonna check with KP Law, you're saying,
Well, that goes
No,
back to
Boston-
the,
no, Boston's clearly decided, they've decided that they're only allowing, and this is what I said at the beginning, they're only allowing owner-occupied units to be rented, but they have a whole structure of language that might allow that. There's ways to change your language, but what we're doing is putting in as an accessory use in our ordinance, tied to a use that is a single family or two-family.
Yeah.
And so so I don't know how Boston, it's probably an entirely separate regulation within the ordinance that's about these uses, and so they can, so it's not attached to it as a single-family use, it's attached to it as its own use.
but again, that's where you get around,
That's how you
hope,
get around it.
eliminating as close to 100% of these by renters as
Yeah,
possible.
Our mechanism will ensure it is not abused by a renter. Because the only renter that would be allowed to do that is one who, and it's equal, it's treating someone, it's allowing someone if they, the opportunity, if the owner allows them to. So I think it is the fair, it's implementing the fairness of federal law that way, I guess.
so we just have to talk about parking?
Yeah, Tony had a question.
Oh, sorry.
At the end, that's fine.
Okay.
So there's only one last, when I was looking at Boston, I noticed that in the complaint process in violation, we hadn't mentioned excessive noise, improper trash disposal, or disorderly conduct as we certainly don't have to, it says, but not limited to, but it seemed like those three were the ones that came up during the last meeting, so I put them in there just as a discussion point. But one unruly renter gets someone to lose their ability to do Airbnb or whatever for 6 months, that seems pretty harsh. If you get anybody could be unruly. But I put it in there.
But I think Airbnb, they have that, a lot of operators, or Airbnb has that in there as well, right?
Yeah, well, this is about the complaint to the town in a violation and us having to shut someone down with just one.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, just
So I
found
added it there
complaint.
because that it had been mentioned. but I
One
felt
or
like that
more
was
with a
the problem there.
6-month period.
It's there, but
I guess, I trust the department to make the proper discretion in that if the violation was so substantial that it warranted the 6-month ban, then that would make sense to me. Doesn't seem like you guys would be inclined to think if someone's just making noise one time, that you'd
I agree.
kick them out for 6
Well, who-
months.
When you say the department, who, they're complaining to who?
So the violations may, at the director's discretion, result in a warning or a ticket in the maximum fine appropriate for the zoning ordinance.
No, I'm looking at C. The paragraph starts with,
So the first sentence, the first
yeah,
page, the department is PCDP because that's the entity that's promulgating this set of rules. The draft regulations.
who are people complaining to?
Well, the complaints, those complaints, we're not finding, that will likely be a call to the police and there'd be a report.
No, right here, complaints shall be made to the department.
Yeah, it says unless it's an emergency, in which case it should be reported. So if a neighbor notices that there's a pattern of trash issues, they would report it to our department. But if there's a excessive noise situation in the middle of the night, then it would be reported to the police.
But there may be trash on the weekend.
That's under the assumption
I-
that after the noise ordinance goes into effect, that there ever is a noise complaint ever again.
And how did you come up, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand how this section got written and also deciding within 30 days.
Well, all that is what all the other ones kind of did, so that's why.
All the other towns.
Yeah.
I didn't compare it to,
I mean, and it's been modified because we're a city and we have a zoning code, and, we have an enforcement officer and a code enforcement officer.
well, that's my question. You said the department, but you think these are going to go to Mike Mena and Tony Mancini
Um,
in
well,
code enforcement?
Most of the things that, so it's either, so our department has the building and code enforcement. So it would be, DCP would be, but if it's a health related issue, then that would be a cooperative effort. I can't predict what all the different types of violations might be, but if there's, if
Right, so the first person they should call would be,
I would probably,
Gideon.
I mean, you keep saying the department. You don't think it, so you want to say the department, not zoning enforcement?
no, I'm not gonna say that because, this is saying what to do, and then the director would make the determination on who would be taking the calls. In the memo at the beginning said that there's gonna be staff, or, potentially changes in the way staff is called, so we don't even know. All zoning enforcement issues go to the zoning, and we also deal with other code enforcement, so I would imagine that's how it would be handled initially.
Again, Metrobridge owner occupied.
Yeah,
You're on it, Tony.
Kenny had pointed that out. So maybe before we get to your concern about parking, maybe just run through, hopefully quickly, some things I saw in some of the other ordinances, just to
Okay.
see. So fees, how are we dealing with fees? We'll set them in,
So there's a fee schedule for everything else, and so I would imagine that I would suggest that you would consider an amendment to the fee schedules rather than having a whole other set of fees.
do we have to, and that's fine by me, do we,
Or you could, I think you're allowed to adopt fees for just this. if
None.
You feel like they're reasonable.
We could do it. Non-criminal, civil.
I meant the booking, like what the registration
Oh,
fees.
registration
I'm sorry,
fees.
registration fees.
Yeah,
So,
you can do-
So we have a single document that we merged, we used to have planning, zoning, now there's a single document for.
and we can just rely on that because in here we already say that they have to pay all
Well,
fees.
that would have to be amended though, so you either have to,
Where is
you
that?
have to decide what the fee should be.
Is it on the website? Where's the single document?
No, we have a single fee schedule,
So we,
does not have this in it.
right,
I'm just wondering where that is.
Yeah,
It's on the website.
it's on the website, that's only that building.
so we have to figure out the fees, but then what I'm saying is we don't have to specifically reference them in here because
So you have to adopt.
right, so that would just, but because this already specifically references paying all fees, so then we would just have to, we'll have to set the fees, which the council will then adopt, which will then get added to this
Schedule.
schedule. Okay, so it's 8:20, I don't want to keep us here any later than 8:30, so so we're gonna have to meet again, but which is probably good, because we need to do some of these updates. So I'll try to take a closer look at fees to see what we think might be reasonable. We've got inspections in there, we've got liability insurance in there. Newton requires notice to abutters. That, I don't,
After the fact, just to say FYI, Boston does it.
FYI, we're gonna be doing this. I mean, I don't, that also ties into, so there's two things, I guess, notice to abutters, but the state statute also would allow us to publish a public registry. So if we had a public registry, we wouldn't need notice to abutters. So now, I guess that would have to be a requirement that we would impose on your department to publish a registry, right?
Yeah, or if we had a consulting.
Well, that was gonna be another question. Because it says the city or town may determine what relevant information shall be listed, including where the accommodation is located. So I mean,
I mean, it could just be one of our forms, and it's on the website.
because I don't necessarily think we need to do notice to abutters if we just have a listing of the addresses. I mean, we don't have to put names associate, I mean, people are still gonna have to jump through some hoops, but.
Is the purpose of it to allow neighbors to have a contact if they have a problem?
All sorts of
I didn't
reasons.
really understand, it doesn't really say why, why they're.
With the state registry,
It's just that the state allows well, I mean, yeah, because there's, obviously, everybody's gonna have to register with the DOR anyways, but the statute allows us to have a public registry.
Right.
I guess that would,
I think that-
well, it'd also be, like, for the customer, let's say, doing their own sleuthing. It's just a transparency issue, I think, for neighbors, abutters, people
It's
looking,
a good name.
yeah.
working with
It seems like a
businesses.
good neighborhood issue, that's,
Yeah.
that's all.
So, I mean, I think, I don't think we need to require a notice to abutters, but I think it would make sense to have a public registry
Yeah, so
listing
look it up.
the addresses. So do we ask the department, once a year to publish?
Well, it would probably just be an ongoing thing when someone applied.
So where does that direction from us, from the council to your department go? Does that end up in the regulation somewhere? Is that,
No, well, I guess you could say,
I think the licensing is going to go through the,
I mean, I guess it could be nice in the
Or, no.
regulations to have it as the last, the registration, it would probably just be under, one, four. It'd probably be like number 8 or something, that the town will keep a registry.
That's fair.
Yeah.
The town,
Where are you putting that, just,
Under B, registration and eligibility, 8.
and is there any specific,
I mean, I don't think, I don't want to, I worry about privacy stuff, so I wouldn't want anything more than just the address.
Well, you'd have the operator, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't just duplicate the, well, is this gonna be automated? I mean, you want it to be accurate, you want it to be ongoing, up to date. You have to have an operator name and address, right?
Oh, do
And
you?
then, are they certified, is every 5 years, then you should also like, have the date that it's valid through, and do you go 5 years without inspections? You get an inspection that's good for 5 years, is that what I read?
probably the question
The way we have it now?
We don't have,
I thought it was, I thought I saw 5 years.
It was 5 years, yeah.
And then and Boston is 1 year.
Because you have to pay an annual fee, right?
right, which we have to set.
So you're gonna have an annual fee anyway, you could do it annually.
A program where you have a map and you click it, and you can find out what the property has. So all building permits, special permits, et cetera, so this would just be another list of that.
Yeah.
So, but it could have another list.
Okay.
Looking to, or someone could.
So that gets into 2 other things. I know, I forget the name of the company, had come and pitched to the town
Just change your name, I think.
about that they could do this third-party monitoring for us. And it seemed pretty crazy, the amount of information that they were here, and they could, basically, it was something you could scale up as much as you want, or you could have it limited to, they would actively monitor Airbnb, all the main things, and find the listings in Watertown to then cross-reference to make sure that they were
So
registered.
they could sell the data.
Well, I don't know that, but,
Well, I don't know, I'm interested in what Gideon's saying,
I
that,
don't think that's part of the.
no, I don't think it's part of this, just trying to talk through some of
Along the
these
same
things
line, yeah.
while, and the thinking being that the registration fees are gonna cover that service. So we'll, just throwing it out there, we don't have to decide on that tonight. And then another thing we don't have to decide on tonight, because we haven't finalized this, but picking an effective date for the ordinance. Would it just be the date it's passed, or because technically, everybody's supposed to be in compliance and registered with the state as of July
Now,
1.
yeah.
But that,
As far as ours goes, there would have to probably be,
because we'd have to,
It'd be whatever
it'd be in
whatever staff wanted for an effective date and support, however long it takes them they think to implement, get everything together.
so just maybe one thing to think about, Gideon.
And if that is important,
Yeah.
because if it's effective, so as soon as we advertise it for the planning board, it's effective. Unless it doesn't pass, that's the council, then it's, because it's the zoning section of it. So it is important, we don't want that to be the effective date.
Yeah, so I think we'll just, once we get closer
Well-
to finalizing, I think we'll probably have a better idea as to what we want
yeah.
the
But I
effective
mean,
date to be.
people still have to get, I don't know if it's a bad thing to have the effective date, because they still have to get registered and inspected anyway.
Well, that's
I don't know if we
part
have
of
a
it.
timeline for,
There's also gonna be like Boston's still, everyone's struggling with trying to actually get people to become registered.
Mhm.
So,
right, so
I think it doesn't matter.
To my point.
If it's,
it doesn't matter if it's I'm not sure what Gideon's saying,
so
but.
registration.
You're saying it doesn't matter because you got to get registered before you can even do it? Is that where you're saying?
Yeah, and I'm just
effective date
curious
doesn't
what
matter?
also, I guess we don't know yet, but because you said maybe there's a service, or what Gideon staff might feel, how long it takes to actually get up and running for people to get inspected and all that.
Tony?
Just real quick, is the registration form that people are going to use, has that been developed yet?
Nope.
Okay. And then the other question, is this, you may know this, Ben, but has the state taken steps to see if people are registered? Or do they penalize you if you're not, if they find out that you didn't register with the state?
Enforcement of it, I wouldn't know. I would assume that they have some, whatever liabilities and punishments that are available under the general laws that promulgate the regulations, but I don't know off the top of my head if there were any in
So
64G.
is there any effort on the state's part to go out and find the ones that are not registered or registered? Or are they leaving it completely up to the individual?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this company that met with the town, I think they do stuff for cities, they do stuff for states, I think. Because you're not gonna register, because the DOR is collecting the taxes, you're not gonna register with us for, you're gonna, I think, I would imagine there's similar to cities and towns having problems registering, I would imagine the state is probably having issues with it as well.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone just registers and has to pay
I
tax.
wonder if you could preempt it maybe by asking Gideon or the department. I obviously, I'm concerned about taking rental units. I know they're not my question whether they're affordable or not. Taking rental units off the, so is, and by this one that we have here, is owner, number, which is not number 8, no, which is back to number 5. So I wonder if there's a way to determine ballpark, how many, if every person owns a three-family, decided to live in one, rent the other, and Airbnb the third. And they could do that for any 3-unit, 4-unit, 5 or 6-unit, as long as they own all the units. Is there any way to determine just how many we could be taking off the market and the stress that, well, you can't determine the stress on whether it would increase, but is there a way to determine how many potentially could be taken off the market?
The assessor data has
If, you-
residential tax exemption and the use code for a two-family.
it's actually all collected for us for tomorrow night, because if you look for the class certification for the tax rate tomorrow, in one of the back pages, it breaks down singles, twos, threes. So I guess we could do a quick,
We could do a quick look at that and say, if every one of these people decided to do this, as
Yeah.
we could be able
I guess it would be a little more math, because it doesn't show all the owner but I guess it would be kind of worst-case scenario if every one of those units was owner occupied, how would it?
Occupied, and this is,
So-
we're saying
so the-
renters could do it.
No, you're right.
The you have tomorrow, does it differentiate between the condos and
everybody.
the actual remaining two families?
It breaks it down to condos, singles, twos, threes. It doesn't go above threes, because I think once you get to 4, it's taxed, it must be taxed commercial.
And I think that the key though is that residential exemption is gonna show there's a substantially lower level of two-family owner occupied than just two-family.
I'm pretty sure, just because I looked at it for somebody earlier, there's less than 100, I think there's 97 two-family homes in Watertown that are currently receiving the owner exemption.
That's not very many.
97 two-family.
97 two-families are getting the owners, well, I mean, I think that was somebody's, there's information,
I'm talking about,
the overall breadth of how it could affect
you
things.
can't do a two-family, right?
Yeah, because you could
Yeah,
rent.
That's the biggest question, actually, because the 3s, 4s, 5s, I mean, there's so few of those.
Yeah.
And the chances of them being owner occupied gets slimmer and slimmer. The two-family is the most likely.
You have to
to have
define owner occupied.
Yeah.
And it's really around 100.
It's, yeah,
So I think we could safely say 100, worst case scenario, roughly.
102s, So 100 apartments in a two-family could come off,
Taken off the market.
correct.
But you're doing owner occupied as residential owners and not renters.
Well, and I think that was to Gideon's point about trying to, well, that would cover an owner adjacent, and then about needing the landlords. I mean, it's obviously hard for us to pin down, but how many landlords are actually gonna give their tenants permission to do this? I would imagine it would be a small amount.
And that's not
I don't
actually,
know.
that's not a concern about that one. The loss of a total unit only would occur
In the
in
adjacent,
the adjacent.
yeah, so that's on a.
Right, because the other thing is already being rented
So
anyways.
that's why, so when you drill down with the data, that's what the owner,
Adjacent,
exemption
yeah.
that assessors have compared with the one of the use code, for two-family will give you, and then there are, I think they actually do have a use code for three-family,
Yeah.
but
I mean, I'm thinking worst case scenario, full units, this could possibly take off in Watertown's like 100, 150. How many units have we added in the past 10 years?
1,400.
you know,
A few thousand?
yeah.
Oh, okay. Just perspective.
All right, it's 8:30. I think parking is gonna be,
That's a lot, though.
parking will probably take some more time, so, because I know Lisa's got concerns about how parking plays into this, and I think that might end up being a longer discussion than we want to start right now, so. I guess, Gideon, if we could ask you to kind of update based on conversation tonight, and then, I mean, is it,
I don't know how you're gonna have those meetings this year.
that's what I was just gonna say. I don't think, do we think it's probably not possible to have another meeting this year, right? November's already out, last week of December is out, second to last week of December, nobody's gonna wanna meet on December
I think we
23rd.
can
I'll be
only
on
on
the
a
23rd.
Friday, because the calendar's,
I mean, so there's really only 3 weeks in December, we've got rules and ordinance, I mean, I don't
And
even
all
have,
of our meetings have been crammed into those.
yeah, public safety is on the second.
although we.
Yeah,
they-
marijuana on
they
the 12th.
Canceled the Watertown Square, so if you wanted to meet next.
But you also have public safety. that
Yeah,
night.
but we're gonna,
You moved it till 5 o'clock specifically because
Yeah.
of Watertown Square.
to end it.
But I also don't want to, with it Thanksgiving being this week, I don't want to tell Gideon, like, 'cause I'm sure he's got plenty of
It's
other
up to,
stuff
it's
on his
up to you
plate.
guys.
Yeah, have you seen our, time court agenda?
He laughed maniacally.
I mean, I'm just looking at dates and what's, it looks, so the first week, first of all, it's way too, really close, but we got noise ordinance on the second, public safety's on the third.
Marijuana's on the 12th.
We have cable interviews on the 9th, council on the 10th. Yeah, marijuana on the 12th.
11.
Yeah.
So it looks like this is probably gonna get pushed off until next term.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we'll all be here. I hope we will. I like
The way you
this.
sound say that is like,
No, I like this committee. I
Well,
hope we're,
technically, I'll be on
No.
the council. We'll
No,
like
technically all be there.
yeah.
you're worried
Barring,
like
barring
at
any
all.
other.
No, I would like to be back on this committee. So I think,
I'm not gonna disclose which committees I sent to Mark. I'm not gonna disclose it.
I get the sense that you're saying you want to get
Ken
off this.
Woodland wants to be
You
on
don't want to
this
spend
committee.
any more time with Lisa and I.
I
But
think I've been on this committee for all four terms. I did include this as one I would like to be on again.
So Gideon, maybe if you can take what we talked about tonight,
Try to get the language to.
yeah, update, and then I'll look into some stuff on fees. We'll look into some other towns for registration forms. We'll have to think a little bit about effective date. And then third-party monitoring would that be like something your department just contracts for, so we don't get involved in that?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I would prefer that speaking on.
Okay.
something that's well within the past, whether it has to be something that's modified to the budget.
Okay.
because The fees don't go directly to, I think your fees would have, they go into the general fund,
Okay,
and you would have to figure that out. And as far as, there's two steps to this, there's the regulations and there's the zoning ordinance.
yeah,
So the regulations are like a informational piece, but we would, probably need to have some kind of a reference how they would be updated.
Yep,
If we find that there's things missing from the regulations, we'll want to have some kind of a cover sheet or something. And Steve's out also next week, so.
so then does this end up being the council, if the zoning,
So this
we recommend, it would be, we recommend to the full council that the council refers this to planning board, the zoning change,
it's a first reading.
for a first
Yeah,
reading?
for the first reading.
Okay.
Just for the zoning change.
Just for the zone,
Yes,
yeah,
yeah,
just for the
just
zoning.
yeah.
I'm just trying to play it out in my head.
Yeah,
how-
exactly.
How it works out.
It'd be just for the zoning change, and the rest of it would, the regulation, the ordinance would come to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything
So
else
it's
for,
not only- so it's just DCDP regulations right now, so.
What did you say?
Well, most of them anyway.
Should come to you.
Yeah, yeah.
the
What did you
regulate?
say, Gideon?
the re-
The ordinance says create regulations,
Yeah,
the department creates the regulations.
yeah. So we just endorse the regulations as a council action, and then the rest of it would go to, planning to amend the zoning.
Okay.
No, but you told us, you said we might want to think about how the regulations get,
Amended,
Amended.
providing.
Yeah, we might want to put a paragraph at the top of the regulations that says these regulations are adopted by
Co-
the community development planning.
Amended without future council input.
Scared of you. All right. Anything else before we let everybody go?
thank you.
I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Goodbye.
Thank you.